Beneath the barren ridgelines of the Syrian highlands, one structure stands in defiance of time and truth, unmarked, impenetrable, ominously quiet. This is Saydnaya Military Prison. For nearly 4 decades, it functioned not merely as a place of confinement, but as a systematic engine of disappearance. Thousands passed through its gates without trial or charge. They left behind no record, only absence. In 2017, Amnesty International issued a chilling report describing Saydnaya as a human slaughterhouse, where executions were industrialized and silence weaponized. This was not chaos, it was design, a regime's architecture of fear, calibrated to erase identity, memory, and dissent, without leaving fingerprints. How did a facility like this remain operational for so long, just miles from the capital, without international outcry? And what does it reveal about the world's threshold for silence? Today, for the first time, we step inside what remains. If you believe some truths must be preserved, like, share, and subscribe. Because silence, left unchecked, becomes complicity. Constructed between 1981 and 1986, Saydnaya Prison became operational under the rule of Hafez al-Assad, and later his son Bashar, as Syria's authoritarian regime solidified its grip on power. But Saydnaya was never intended to be just a detention facility. It was built as an extension of state ideology, an apparatus to control not through law, but through fear. Located on a remote military base north of Damascus, the prison was deliberately concealed from public view. No court records, no visits, no accountability. Inside, it was divided into 2 primary sectors. The so-called white section housed high-profile detainees, political rivals, military officers, or foreign nationals. Conditions there were harsh but structured. We now enter what former detainees referred to as the red section, the most restricted, most concealed quadrant of Saydnaya Prison. It is buried beneath layers of reinforced concrete, engineered not just for isolation, but for total sensory disintegration. The air here is dense, stale. Time feels arrested. Nothing moves, not light, not sound. Only the faint echo of our footsteps reminds us we're still in motion. The cells are narrow, barely wide enough for a human body to lie flat. No windows, no ventilation, no concept of night or day. The walls themselves seem to pulse with silence. Names are still visible, scratched into the concrete with makeshift tools, a metal fragment, a sharpened bone, a fingernail, birth dates, verses, counting marks. The final record of people the regime tried to erase. Then there's the iron press, crude, industrial. Survivors say it was used to compress corpses, flattening bodies so they could be stored more efficiently or discarded without trace. At first it sounds unthinkable, then you see it. Beyond that, the salt rooms, lined with thick beds of industrial-grade sodium. These chambers weren't for punishment. They were for preservation. With no refrigeration, salt was the state's solution to managing the dead. Inmates recall lying next to decomposing bodies for days, with no explanation, just silence, and the smell of what waited for them next. Scattered across the floor, shirts stiff with time, scraps of cloth, children's shoes. Nothing has been staged. This is what was left behind. Here, silence is not absence. It is testimony. Every inch of this space speaks, not in words but in residue. And what it said is almost unbearable. In the spring of 2024, after the Assad regime fell, a video began circulating among families of the disappeared. It showed a group of frail men being led from darkness into daylight, squinting, staggering, as if pulled from a different century. In that video, Suleiman al-Youssef recognized his son. Shadi had vanished in 2013 after sharing an article critical of the government on social media. For 11 years, his father searched for answers. There were no records, no visits, no gravesite, just an empty chair at the dinner table, and the unrelenting silence of a state that never admitted he existed. He wasn't dead. He was in Saydnaya. In another corner of Syria, Hamdos Suleiman was arrested in 2011 for something almost laughably mundane, buying lemons from a market rumored to be under surveillance. That moment, trivial, forgettable, was the start of a 13-year descent into institutionalized torment. He emerged half-blind, his eye permanently damaged by repeated beatings with electrical cable. His back bore the marks of suspension torture, what guards euphemistically called gravity drills. He was never charged, never given a reason. His story, like thousands of others, wasn't unique. It was procedural. Saydnaya didn't require proof. It required obedience. Men were condemned by rumor, by association, by something they said, or something someone claimed they said. Inside, inmates communicated by tapping on walls, scratching dates into floors, or whispering fragments of prayer when the guards changed shifts. Time became abstract. Identity dissolved. Hope eventually became dangerous. And yet, some held on. They marked days with soap, memorized the names of cellmates who didn't make it, buried poems in the seams of their clothing. They preserved memory even when their country refused to. Now, with the gates open and the regime gone, these survivors are speaking for the first time in years. But their words don't just describe a prison, they describe a system, a blueprint for how silence is manufactured, how truth is suppressed, and how everyday people can be made to vanish. Imagine, just for a moment, being taken without explanation. No phone call, no lawyer, no charge. Imagine your name being erased, not because of what you did, but because of what you believed. Then imagine it wasn't a foreign country. Imagine it was here. Imagine it was someone you loved. In 2017, Amnesty International released a 48-page report detailing what had long been whispered but never confirmed. It accused the Syrian government of executing an estimated 13,000 prisoners inside Saydnaya over a span of just 5 years, from 2011 to 2016. Most were hanged in secret, their bodies discarded without records, without rights, without recognition. The report called the facility a human slaughterhouse, not a metaphor, a classification. According to the documentation, killings occurred on a regular schedule, sometimes weekly, sometimes twice a week. Detainees were told they were being transferred to civilian courts. Instead, they were blindfolded, led to the basement, and hanged, often in groups of 20 to 50 at a time. It wasn't random, it was ritualized, and it didn't end there. International human rights organizations, from the United Nations to Human Rights Watch to the Syria Justice and Accountability Center, have urged global bodies to preserve every inch of Saydnaya, every floor plan, every logbook, every digital trace. Why? Because memory fades, and regimes, especially fallen ones, erase fast. The goal is not only justice, it is historical clarity, a defense against revisionism. But Saydnaya is not the only scar of its kind. Across the globe, prisons like Black Dolphin in Russia, Camp 22 in North Korea, and even Guantanamo Bay in the United States have all been cited for human rights violations, ranging from indefinite detention to systematic abuse. Yet Saydnaya stands apart, not just for its brutality, but for its invisibility. It operated in silence. It erased voices without a whisper. It weaponized secrecy. So the question is no longer just, what happened here? It's this: what does it take to hold a regime accountable for erasing its own citizens? Who decides when disappearance becomes a crime? And more urgently, who has the power to prosecute a government that designed its prisons to leave no witnesses? Saydnaya was never merely a prison. It was a system calibrated to erase identity, suppress memory, and extinguish dissent. For decades, it operated in silence. Now its walls speak louder than ever. But the question remains, if a state can vanish its own people without consequence, what does that say about the world that let it happen? And if this could be hidden for so long, what else are we still choosing not to see? And if you're drawn to what lies behind the silence, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, so you never miss the next story that wasn't meant to be told. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.